It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, Quartz Magazine lists the best 15 off-roaders of all time. JLR is working on the new Discovery 6. And we're joined by Jenna and Liza to talk about driving the Queen's Land Rovers. And now, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Beres, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at theberescollection.com or follow us on Instagram at theberescollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I'm the trafficator to Steven's multifunctional turn signal switch. I'm the charming but outdated host of podcasting, Ike Goss. I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike and Jenna and Liza. We have the full team this morning, and we'll start right off with some news, Rebelle Rally news. Liza and Jenna, you guys have a little bit of an announcement. I mean, is it an announcement at this point? Is it a secret? Is it a non-secret? You are both driving for Volkswagen this year in a vintage Volkswagen Beetle.
Wrong.
No?
Wrong.
Oh.
Wrong.
That would have been awesome. Like a Baja bug.
Like an old bug, like a Baja bug.
That would have been sweet. That'd have been sweet.
All right. The suspense is killing me. What are you driving this year?
Well, we're very, very lucky to, again, get to partner with JLR North America, who are supporting us in the rally this year. And we get to drive another 130 around the desert. This time we'll be in a 130 outbound edition,
Cool.
which is real nice. Lots of cargo space for all of the gack that we need. And we were lucky enough to lay eyes on that vehicle last week when we were up in Pebble Beach. It was being used by media person at Range Rover House. And so we got to just go and peek our eyeballs in and look and sneak around that vehicle. But we won't get that vehicle in our hot little hands for a couple more weeks here. And so we'll have a couple weeks before the Rebelle to get it all packed and outfitted and wrapped and ready to go. So very exciting. Woo-hoo.
I did get to see this vehicle, and it is cooler than I expected it to be.
It's a neat color. It's tiger gray,
yeah.
Which it's like a silvery gray color. We'll be wrapping it, so I don't know how much you'll see of the gray, but it's a neat color.
Hopefully a reasonable amount. It is a handsome car.
It is a handsome car.
It is. It's very sharp, and it's very similar to the car that we drove last year, all intents and purposes. But the outbound edition, I think, is just going to offer us a little more cargo space, a little more off-road capability, and real excited to get to take that one out.
Mm-hmm. And I do like that the outbound edition takes the signature panel and extends it entirely over the back windows. Just giant.
Those back windows, you can't.
Signature.
You literally can't see anything out of them anyways. Yeah. So why not?
Why not just make them a giant signature panel? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or space for sponsor logos.
Yes, exactly that. A billboard, if you will.
A billboard, if you will. Yeah. No, I like it. Yeah. I like it a lot. Well, that's fantastic.
So you guys still have to do some modifications to the vehicle to prepare it for the event. You have to disable the navigation. You have to, add the... What do you have to do?
The big thing will be getting the Tatra trip in. And luckily, my Trek Defender is similar enough in terms of how the dash is all laid out and things like that Stephen and I have been retrofitting, or not retrofitting, what's the right word? We have been...
modifying a set of Tatra trips to be able to...
We've been prototyping it.
We have been prototyping it. That's true, yes.
We've been prototyping it for my car, getting it ready. Jenna and I are going to go out and do a week of practice here coming up right away. And so we've got the Tatra trips, 2 of them this year. We're getting those all ready to go and then able to kind of hot swap them over to the new vehicle when we get it. Mm-hmm. Other than that, really not a whole heck of a lot. We're going to run bone stock again this year. And so, not really any aftermarket stuff we're going to do to it. It's really just about spending a lot of time to make the interior of that car as accessible as we need it to be. So it's the easiest as possible to get at the things when you need to get at them.
And are you guys going to change the wheels and tires on this car? Maybe.
So luckily, the Outbound edition comes with signature 20-inch rims, and so we get to put we had 22s last year, and we just had no sidewall. And that was one of the things that we impressed upon JLR was it was pretty important to have a bit of a meatier tire this year. So we will be running the stock 20s that come with the Outbound edition and aluminum alloy wheels. And we get to put a little bit more aggressive tire on it this year, which is great.
Nice.
Exciting.
Very cool.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Speaking of capable off-road vehicles, and certainly more to come as sponsors are announced and the hot tub gets installed in the back of that Outbound edition and all of that. Lots to keep track of.
The beef jerky dispenser.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. There's barbecue that'll be
shaved ice machine.
Soft serve.
Oh yeah, soft serve machine. Maybe a butter churns in those wheels. We got to see. Maybe
that's a sad story that you're bringing up there.
Yeah,
you just need a PTO attachment on the back.
Yeah, that's right. So we can churn up some ice cream on the trail there. A little Dole Whip. The end of a long rally day is exactly what is needed. But speaking of capable off-road vehicles, our friends over at Quartz Magazine, which I know you're all subscribers to, frequent the Quartz Magazine, they have come up with a list of 15 of the best off-roaders ever made. I thought I might run down that list and just see what your take is on that, the three of you, if you agree or disagree with that list. And this is come up with by the famous Andy Komlowitz from Jalopnik, who is famed for coming up with stupid lists of things over at Jalopnik. So this one for Quartz Magazine, we'll put this in the show notes so you can take a look at it yourself. But the first one is the Toyota Land Cruiser. Course, one of the greatest 4x4s of all time.
Is this ranked? Is this in
order?
It
isn't necessarily ranked. I don't think it's ranked. I don't think it's necessarily ranked. I think it's just that.
What are you looking for from us? Like, are we rating it out of 5 stars?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, let's say
down?
Yes. I would say
Is
thumbs up.
Is this a U.S. market Land Cruiser? Is this a
rest
of the world Land Cruiser?
Is it an old one? Is this a new one?
That's kind of too much. That's too much. I think, just Land Rover, just Land Cruisers, generally speaking. This is, this is an older Land Cruiser. The one that they picture in this article is sort of a 1980s classic, sort of Land Cruiser. The one that you would see,
FJ60?
It is an FJ60. It's the one that you would see, a lot of guerrilla gangs using in third world countries, drug runners in Mexico, that kind of car. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I think we all agree that that's a good one. Then, of course, next up on the list is the classic Willys Jeep. Of course, the World War II vehicle that sort of started it all. I think everybody can agree that's a pretty that's a good one. I've always wanted a Willys Jeep. I actually was given one, but couldn't accept it because I didn't have room for it.
I've heard this story. Remind me why you couldn't accept it.
I didn't have any room for it. And
how
is that stopping?
How does that stop you then? It's not stopping you now.
Haven't you gotten a forward control since then?
Several. Yeah. Okay. The next one is the Tatra, which I'm a big fan of. It is an 8-wheel drive, for those who don't know. 8-wheel drive, usually used as a support vehicle, especially in like the Dakar and stuff. They're a giant forward control.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're super, super cool.
So not a Tatra, a Tatra.
Tatra. Yeah, the Tatra. Yeah.
Yeah. For a minute there, Tatra. I was like, is that one of the Thundercats that I'm not familiar with?
That's Chitara. I think you're thinking of Chitara. Yeah.
No.
Tatra.
No.
Tatra.
Everybody knows Chitara.
Yeah, the Tatra, which is a Czech vehicle. I love them. I think they're super cool. And there's actually...
I think it's awesome in somebody else's garage. I don't need it.
The Tatra is a pretty cool vehicle, and Tatra was a revolutionary designer. Designed a lot of really interesting cars and influenced heavily stuff made by Ferdinand Porsche a little bit later.
Yep.
But the trucks that bear the name Tatra are very impressive. Jenna and I got to see those in Argentina.
Yep.
In the Dakar Rally. Those things are super cool.
There are now dedicated races for them, right? Like they actually race those things themselves now.
They have always raced those things, right?
Yeah.
A truck category in Dakar. Yeah. Yeah,
they're just like a huge land yacht. It's very Mad
They're
Max.
huge.
I feel like
it is.
They have a driver and 2 co-drivers, and you sit like one in front and 2 in the back, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because you can't physically manipulate the tires to change the tires with just 2 people, They're so big.
Oh, right.
But look up some videos online of the Tatra racing. Those things are awesome. Really,
Very
Even
cool.
not racing.
Yeah,
I
so
feel
I
like
like that
Just sitting still.
this article says when you get stuck in your Pinskauer and the Unimog that comes to your rescue also gets stuck, it's time to ring up the guy with the Tatra.
I feel like you
the
see
Tatra
these
is like,
videos, they're crazy. Like driving
yeah,
through Russia and stuff, where they're just going through these insane fields. I mean, there's no trees, right? They can't drive anywhere with trees. Like they're
Right.
too tall.
No.
But in
Right.
big, crazy,
No
open,
bridges.
landscapes with huge ruts and crazy fording and all of that kind of stuff. They're epic.
Speaking
they're
of the Unimog, next up on the list is the Unimog generally speaking, but specifically the U5023, which is the sort of modern Unimog. So not Ike's tiny, adorable Unimog, which I'm a huge fan of, but the giant off-road, what really is it's a work truck. It's it's not a fun vehicle. No one has one for leisure. They are industrial vehicles, but they are pretty incredibly capable portal-axled giant Mercedes super wagons. What do you think?
It's like
What's
an
your
off-road semi.
favorite Mog there, Ike? What do you like?
My favorite Unimog? I mean, I like the little diesel ones, the agricultural ones, but Unimogs, like all vehicles, have just gotten bigger and more bloated and huger over the years, and this one is no exception. It's enormous.
Yeah,
It
it's the
has
size
like
of an
50-inch
apartment
tires.
complex. Yeah.
Yeah, it's massive. So it's not as practical for what I would use one for, but certainly it's an impressive vehicle, no doubt. And the new Unimogs obviously build on a lineage of interesting and capable four-wheel drives. But the classic Uninics are pretty neat. Those are the ones that are articulated in the middle, and they're kind of like forestry tractors. Those are super neat. Super neat.
Yeah.
While we're on this topic, shout out for Mogfest, which just happened last weekend.
That's right.
Here in
Yeah.
Oregon.
That's right.
Yeah, 25th year of Unimog Fest, and we did not go. We missed it, unfortunately, because where were we? Remind me where we were. I don't even remember.
Oh, right.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
right.
that's right. Yeah.
Did Jason ever get home? Did he get home? Is he still there?
We'll find out.
No,
we'll find
right.
out
Okay.
whether he made it back or not.
We don't know.
We don't know. We're not sure. We'll see if he shows up to work today. Yeah. Let's hear about the rest of these.
Yeah, next up on the
off-roaders.
list is a rental car. Most capable off-road vehicle rental car. I agree. I strongly agree. I think that nothing is more capable than the carefree abandon that one experiences from a car that isn't yours.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I definitely concur with this. Speaking of when we went to visit the Dakar in Argentina, Ike was off motorcycle following the Dakar with a friend, and I had a rental car that I drove up over the most insane mountain pass into Chile and then got it stuck on the beach. It was great. The mountain pass was so tall that I was like dizzy at the top. And I had
it's like the highest pass in South America, the Paso de Agua Negra.
Yeah. And it had it's like almost 16,000 feet elevation, 4,780 meters. I just looked it up. Anyway, it had what's it called, where the ice is like growing up out of the ground, like in little vertical pillars.
Permafrost,
like
stalagmites.
Yeah, they were like oozing out of the ground. It was crazy. And I got to the top, and the border patrol. There's a border crossing at the pass at the top of this mountain, and the guys at the border crossing were like, "Sola? Like, are you alone like doing this?" It was the craziest thing. This is a dirt road. There's no barriers on the edges. You just plummet like thousands of feet down in these crevasses. Maybe there'd be a little white rock, like set on the edge so you don't drive off the edge. And it's
like one of those like death roads that you read about in those crazy lists of crazy roads around the world. So
but the rental car did it.
Of course,
nothing more capable than a rented car, as Liza and I found out with the Nissan Qashqai
especially a rental car in a country without an extradition treaty.
That's exactly right. Next up is the Jeep Wrangler, which whatever. Jeep Wrangler.
Specifically, they quote the Jeep Wrangler 4xe, which, while I'm not a Jeep person myself, and kudos to those people who love them. We do have to shout out that 4xe has won the Rebelle Rally several times, came in second place last year, came in first place at least the 2 previous years to that. So
I think that's
whether you
entirely
love
driver.
them or not,
Entirely
I
driver.
think it says a lot about the driver,
Yeah.
first of all. But
Entirely
also
driver.
remind me why it didn't win last year.
Well,
ran out of power.
Because I forget.
But
I forget why.
Right.
I'm sorry.
be
What was
fair,
that? What was that? What happened?
Power and gas.
they were not.
Oh, it let the driver down.
Let the driver down.
Just right at the end, right when they needed it the most.
Right when they needed it the most. Bum, bum,
I'll
bum.
be darned.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
many cars ran out of gas on that day last year. They certainly were not the only ones. So.
Next up, one of my absolute favorite vehicles of all time, one that I strangely don't own but have always wanted and will one day own, is the Pinskauer, the Steyr-Busch Pinskauer. This one specifically the 710, but if it's 2-wheel or if it's 4-wheel or 6-wheel, it's always a good time. What people don't realize about these cars when you look at them is that they're like not bigger than a 110. You know, they're small cars, but they
86-inch wheelbase.
Yeah, they're tiny. They're the same size as a 90.
I don't want to ask this question, but I'm gonna ask it. How is a Unimog different than a forward control? Aren't they kind of the same thing?
Oh, like a Pinskauer and a Unimog and a 101?
I'm sorry, a Pinskauer. How is a Pinskauer and a forward control different?
Well, all Pinskauers are forward controls, but not all forward controls are Pinskauers.
There you go. That's true.
Okay.
So a
See, I didn't
Pinskauer.
want to ask the question. I never should have. I should have listened to my gut.
That's reasonable. So the Pinskauer is a vehicle that is made by Steyr Daimler Puch, and it's a specific model of car, vehicle, truck, what have you. A forward control is a design layout, so that's just something where you sit over the front wheels. So that could be a semi-truck, could be a Unimog, could be a Land Rover, could be anything really that where you sit over the front wheels.
It's true that this
even Jeeps made them.
The Pinskauer and the 101 are very similar, but different. So still get to have both.
Yes.
It's just British versus Austrian versus German.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This uses a similar chassis and backbone design to the DeLorean, actually. Funny enough, that they're the Pinskauer and the DeLorean
the Pinskauer came first.
Are radically similar in their drivetrain design. So there you go. Oddly similar.
We were on a trip to Baja, I don't know, 10 years ago with Land Rovers. And of course, then we found a Pinskauer and then ended up driving it all the way back to Oregon. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I want one real bad. I want one real bad. They're super cool, portal axled again, like a Unimog, but tiny and super cool like a Land Rover. So sort of the best of both worlds.
Even tinier one. They made the Halflinger.
The Halflinger. I love a Halflinger so much. Good friend of ours out in the Midwest. We were ripping around in his Halflinger on the his compound, and man, I do love a Halflinger. Like I can't even tell you. Super
but the
fun.
Pinskauer has a turret hatch.
Halfway through this list yet?
I know a guy that has a Halflinger that might be for sale.
I bet you do. Next up on
you can just keep that information to yourself over there.
You could probably park it in the back of another car.
I could put it in the back of the 101 of the forward control for sure. I could absolutely, no question.
It's so small; it'd fit in the garage of your house.
It's so small. It's so small. Actually, that's already full of Land Rovers. Next up on the list, the Peugeot 504, which is a famous sedan, and it is known for its crossing of Africa and any other number of crazy things. I think that's more because the French love to drive cars in places that cars shouldn't be driven more than that vehicle is any more capable than anything else. The French are definitely about inappropriate transportation, and this is a perfect example.
The Peugeot is definitely, it's hard to argue that it hasn't been taken a lot of places, but it's easy to argue, should it have really been taken to those places?
Shouldn't have been gone anywhere, but yeah, it's true.
I appreciate the quote on this, which says, "The French really knew what they were doing when they built this car. Really impressive stuff from a mundane-looking wagon."
It is.
And it's very true.
It is a very mundane
It is very
car.
pedestrian.
Yeah, it's the most pedestrian-looking car there is. Next up is the Jeep J2500 pickup truck, which is one of the greatest pickup trucks, American-made pickup trucks probably of all time. They are extremely rare. And they are...
No, this is a 1973.
Yeah, the 2500 2500s are super rare, super expensive, super hard to find. They didn't make very many. They weren't very popular. I think because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ike, but they were a lot more expensive than their contemporaries from Chevy and Ford at the time.
Now, I don't know about everywhere, but here in Oregon, the J Series pickups, which are sometimes referred to as Gladiators, not to be confused with the current
modern
iteration of the Gladiator name. They're actually pretty common here in Oregon. I don't know whether that's because they sold a lot of them here or whether they just survived in greater numbers, but they are ridiculously inexpensive. Like you can buy a decent Gladiator for like $1,000.
Wow.
They're just for whatever reason, they're just not super desirable, but they do maintain a pretty good parts availability and a reasonable enthusiast movement. Sometimes they're called full-size Jeeps.
Yeah.
So there's like full-size Jeep message boards for these J Series pickups. But, you know, in the town we used to live in Indiana, there was a lady that had a red one that was like original paint, and she had bought it new. And I just loved seeing that thing cruise around town. It was in super nice shape. So I have a soft spot for those trucks.
They are cool. They're really,
cool.
really hard to find down here, and people pay a ton for them.
Well, I'll ship you as many as you want.
Let's do it. We're going to set up an underground railroad of Jeep J bodies, and
it'll be like those South American guys that drive the Toyota pickups down I-5, you know, towing like 3 other Toyota pickups.
That's exactly
Just
right.
do that with Jeeps.
The next up is the Shirley Pugsley, which I've not heard of before, but apparently it's a
fat.
Yeah.
No, I think they put this in as a joke. It's a fat tire snow bike.
Yeah.
There's a whole paragraph talking about why it's so great. And then below that, Jalopnik responds by saying, no, this sucks. Don't do it. Cars are better.
Yeah, cars are better. No, it's apparently though, it is the first bike to have those big giant fat tires and off-roady kind of things. I don't know. The next one is something I've never heard of, a Coot 4x4 off-road like dumping truck thing.
Amphibious
I don't know.
vehicle.
Yeah, like amphibious vehicle.
It isn't it's not a dumping truck. It's sort of like a recreational 4-wheel drive in the same way that the Argos, six-wheel drives are. So this kind of predates those, and they are amphibious. They have like 2 independent like tub sections that are hinged together. So
of course, yes.
They're actually articulated, and so they do float.
Right.
And they are 4-wheel drive. They're very small. They're not to be, you know, it's kind of a misnomer that this is an off-road vehicle because it's really only off-road. It's not an on-road vehicle at all. You can't really drive this on the road.
Right.
But they are kind of cute, and they do have a fun name. But greatest of all time, probably not on my list.
That seems like a stretch. Next up, the Mitsubishi Pajero, which, as we all know, absolutely. Good friend Mercedes is a collector. She and her husband probably have more of these than anybody else I know, which is like, I think they have 6 of them or something, which is more than enough. They're fun. Famously, the favorite SUV of Jackie Chan. So.
Yeah, these are pretty neat cars. You know, we didn't get a lot of these sold here in the United States, but certainly they have some pretty impressive rally credentials. We saw one down in the Japanese vehicle roundup area in Pebble Beach over the weekend, the Evo Pajero, which was pretty cool to see. Neat cars. Best of all time? Maybe in terms of like rally credentials, but in terms of like just cool vehicles, maybe not. They're not that neat looking.
Now, the one note here as it comes to the Land Rover is old Land Rovers, just as a category, generally speaking, which I think is awfully broad. I feel like they could have maybe made a shot at one particular Land Rover.
They had 3 different Jeeps, so I don't know. But they're just old Land Rovers, generally speaking. I think we can obviously all agree on that. It's true, I suppose. All Land Rovers are great. And then finally, to ride off the list, a goat. A physical goat, the animal itself. Just a goat.
Yeah. It, you know, probably harder to ride than you would want, like especially climbing a cliff face or something. But coming from Alberta, where we have, you know, Rocky Mountain goats, they are serious climbers. They are amazing off-road, incredibly capable. You know, they're very fuel efficient. And, you know, there's
nowhere to put your coffee, though. No cup holders.
No cup holders, but they are
definitely
unstoppable. Unstoppable.
Absolutely sure-footed, but I'm going to nix this one on a technicality. Not really a vehicle.
Not a vehicle. I mean, you could ride one if you could convince it, I
feel like whoever wrote this list was pretty lazy.
Yeah, it's a lazy list. That's a lazy list. Well, there you have it.
They were like, we got 14. We need a 15th. How about a goat?
How about a goat? We have already picked every Jeep we could think of. How about a goat? So there you go. And there you have it. That's according to Quartz and our friends at Jalopnik. That is the 15 best off-roaders of all time. And speaking of off-roaders, there is a new one apparently in the works from our friends at JLR. The Venerable Discovery is coming up on a refresh into now what will be its 6th iteration. Of course, 1 through 4, very popular. 5th, polarizing to say the least. And 6, here's an opportunity to maybe do something different. A lot of people would say that the Defender maybe was the 6th discovery, but we don't necessarily subscribe to that here at the Underpowered Hour. But the 6th discovery is rumored to be on its way. What are you thinking, Ikers?
Well, I think that the Discovery, whether we agree with it or not, has been sort of supplanted by the Defender. And I think that's reflected by the sales of Discovery.
Or the lack
it has
of
diminished pretty substantially in the face of the new Defender. So I think they're looking to move the Discovery away from the Defender because the Defender has basically, cannibalized all the sales of Discovery. Discovery represents 4% of JLR's sales. So
that's not much at all.
No, very small amount. Not a lot.
I will say, as the only person here who has owned a Discovery 5 and a new Defender, I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to say what I think of both vehicles.
Yeah.
And I love my Defender. I'll be really, really clear on this. I absolutely love my Defender with all my heart. I will regret to the day I die selling that Discovery 5. I really loved that car. I wish I hadn't gotten rid of it. I wish we had kept it. Now, if we had kept it, we probably wouldn't have gotten the Defender. The Defender kind of replaced it. And I guess I don't regret that. I wish I could have kept both. I loved my Discovery 5, but I recognize that I don't know that people know where it fits in terms of their whole product catalog of all their offerings. Discovery definitely is the one with a little bit of an identity crisis. It tends to live more in the mall crawler, grocery getter category, and yet it is a crazy capable off-road vehicle. I took mine out on lots of trails with the SoCal Rover Club. It was a great, great car. There is going to be a Discovery 5 in the Rebelle Rally this year.
Right.
I'm really excited to see. Our friend Lou is going to be driving that one, and I'm really excited to see that one out on the trails with us. I loved that Discovery 5. Wish I hadn't sold it.
For the most part, the Discovery 5 and the Defender, as it has always been, from an underpinning standpoint, is basically the same car. They're more or less the traction system, the computers, the whole bits, more or less the same, the same system. So it's not that different from a capability standpoint. I guess departure angles and valences and those sort of things are a little less aggressive on the Discovery than they are on the Defender. But I'll say this. The Discovery was certainly more comfortable. It was just a more comfortable car. It was bigger.
Really?
It was bigger, like a lot bigger, like way bigger. And so there was just more room inside of it. And I will say that the Discovery seats are closer to Range Rover seats than the Defender seats are. And as a result of that, they are just more comfortable.
So it sounds like you're heavily touting a Discovery 5.
Yeah.
Is that
I'm an advocate
is that
for
an overlooked
Discovery.
Land Rover model?
Sad. I hope they decide not to depart away from that as a brand mark, because I really like Discovery. We've always liked Discovery. Steve's mom had a few Discoveries.
The first Discovery in Canada,
when he and I were dating. Yeah, like we loved those older Discoveries, and certainly our Rover Club. There are so many people with tricked out older, D2s and LR3s and 4s and things like that. And they're such awesome vehicles. I loved the 5. I know that a lot of people didn't. I would be really sad if, because of that market share only being 4% of their sales, if they ever decided to abandon Discovery, it would break my little heart.
We had one of the very rare diesel ones as well.
According to this article, they're planning to, move it away from Defender, and they keep mentioning a style or term, family adventure. Is kind of the direction that they want to take it, or at least according to this article, are planning to take it. And some of their design influences are the Volkswagen ID.
Oh my.
And also the Rivian.
Oh.
Okay.
So sort of a modern, like, capable minivan sort of.
Definitely sounds minivan-esque, yeah.
Okay.
An off-road minivan.
So that sounds terrible, but I'm actually in favor. I think that's great. I think off-road minivan, like a GMC Safari all-wheel drive, why not? That's, like something that will just dominate the minivan market. Like, I think that's pretty cool. I think that could be cool.
I think I have to resign myself to the fact that Discoveries are going to go that route, and they are no longer going to resemble the Discoveries of the past. Like, they're just going to continue to move farther away from what Discovery was known for, and I have to just be okay with it now.
Well, I think when you say it, or when you hear it, you think sort of like the Rivian, the electric hatchback that they've come out with as a prototype. You hear it and you're like, meh, not that exciting. But when you see it, you're like, that was really well executed, and it's sort of something different in the market that you don't see. And I think Land Rover has an opportunity to make something like that that's totally divergent, from their typical offerings, that moves it away from Defender, that sort of checks all these boxes of what they're trying to do, but could be actually really cool.
My advice to them would be definitely don't call it an off-road capable minivan. That would be step one.
I don't know. I think the Westphalia 4x4s, they sold those things like crazy. Those things are worth a ton of money. The 4x4 Westphalia, those are
pretty cool.
Those are basically, they have not lost any value. They're still at like retail price now.
They've gone up in price.
They've gone up in price. Yeah, if anything. Yeah. No, the 4x4 Westphalias are
Synchro
awesome.
Westphalia.
Yeah, they're awesome. So there you go.
So I think that that's something that you can't really get. I mean, what do you have in four-wheel drive vans? You've got Sprinters, right? You've got
Giant,
the Transit four-wheel drive. You've got all these pretty large vehicles that aren't really that capable. Land Rover could make something that has its a unique market space.
And all those vehicles are also, they're fairly industrial. If you look at the 4x4 van market, like they're an industrial van first, that maybe in the case of a Sprinter and things, like the manufacturer has created a consumer variant and maybe a luxury consumer variant. But yeah, if Land Rover goes for like 4x4 van, luxury van first, man, I'm all over that. That sounds great.
Just a side note, this would not be Land Rover's first 4x4 van.
It's true.
So back in the Series 1 production, they built a 4x4 van. Mm-hmm. It had a fiberglass body. It ultimately went to Switzerland. It was sort of a prototype van / forward control. And it's actually really cool. It's built on a 107 station wagon chassis. And so, if you think about it, Land Rover has a history of making four-wheel drive vans. Just not very many of them.
Not a lot of them. No, not a lot of them. This is it. This is their opportunity to just start cranking those things out. I mean, really, it could even be forward control. Maybe this is their opportunity. Discovery could become a modern forward control off-road van.
I mean, to be fair, I think vans are mostly forward controls.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, mostly. Yeah. I mean, that engine is like, it's 80% forward control.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Well, speaking of 80% forward control, we had quite the weekend at the Concours d'Elegance, as we discussed last episode with our good friend Jeff Aronson. And what a great time that is, man. It's always great to chat with Jeff. He is a scholar, gentleman scholar, whatever. The Prime Minister of New England, everything you need from a human being. It's right there.
He's pretty great.
He really is. And we thought we would round up today with a little conversation about the driving specifically of those Land Rovers owned previously by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, either specifically driven by or those that were ceremoniously or ceremonially
Just stop.
Used by Her Majesty. There was sort of two sets, right? There was like the cars that she used and then the cars that she sort of rode in for official purposes. So Ike and I got a good opportunity to kind of ride in some of them, but Jenna, you and Liza had an opportunity to do quite a bit more than that. You had an opportunity to cruise around in one of these incredible royal review cars.
Yeah, it was pretty special. I hope we made the Queen proud.
I think she was looking down on you. Her and about 27 corgis all looking down on you with a smile on their face.
Yes.
It was really, really special. And when it hit our radar that this was a possibility that we might get to drive it, I didn't think we'd get to drive it the way that we got to drive it. Like we took it out for a 63-mile drive down the coast and back.
Pretty extensive.
We got to stop and do a bunch of photo opportunities with Dimbleby where, we got to go across the Bixby Bridge a few extra times with the other cars. Like we really got to get to know that vehicle very well. And what a joy. What an absolute joy. I told people I didn't realize it was on my bucket list to drive one of the Queen's Rovers. But now that I've done it, I can cross it off that list and add it retroactively. It was a really, really special weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about halfway through that drive, I think we were stopped at one of the roadside, viewpoints, and I mentioned to Liza, I was like, "Oh my god, my face hurts from smiling so much. Like my cheeks were so sore, but it wasn't like I was fake smiling. It was just like actually smiling, and it was just so much smiling." It was so fun. It was so great.
And it was so joyful.
There were crowds along the road, along the stretch of this drive, and you're just waving, and everyone's cheering as you drive by. It was so cool.
I will say, one of my observations about Car Week in Monterey in general was there was a real lack of women behind the wheel. Mm-hmm. I saw almost no women driving. Sure. I saw a lot of women as passengers. We were lucky enough that when the tour started, we weren't right in the mix with everybody. We had to join the tour like a quarter mile into it and get into the lineup of Rovers because our car was outside of the lineup. And so I saw a lot of cars go by and I realized like, wow, I don't know if I've seen another woman driving today. And I'm sure there were a few, but out of the probably 200 cars on that tour, it's definitely fewer than one hand, wow, the number of women that were behind the wheel. And so I like to think that we were very noticeable in that car. It was a real eye catcher. And we heard so many people commenting on how great it was that there were women driving one of the Queen's vehicles. So big shout out to JLR for inviting us to be part of that, because I think that was not a small thing to have women driving in the Tour d'Elegance. I don't think that happens all the time.
It was pretty cool to see, and not only that, it was sort of a feature of women-owned Land Rover vehicles. So that was neat, and they had you guys driving the Queen's Land Rover, and they also sponsor you in the Rebelle Rally, another rally about women. So that is pretty cool. They definitely are projecting a commitment to women drivers, and I think that's worthwhile and worth celebrating. And really nothing new. We've talked about this before. The Land Rover Review magazine, always had a column for women like back into the 50s. And I think especially at that time, that's something different and something special and unique to Land Rovers. Little
segue off topic for just half a second. There was a thread that I got fed to me on, Instagram's threads that was at a Land Rover event in the UK, and it had a sign on somebody's old series truck that talked about, it was one of, 70s misogynistic humor about why a Land Rover is better than a woman, because my Land Rover doesn't care if I bring another one home, because, just like really crummy, low ball humor like that. Mm-hmm. And, it sort of sparked this conversation about why, like, that humor isn't funny anymore in this day and age. It's kind of not really cool. Like, we've kind of moved past that. And there were a lot of women who commented that, like, humor like that is one of the barriers to entry. It's one of the reasons why more women don't get behind the wheel or don't go out to their local Land Rover events if they're met with attitudes like this. And so, even in 2024, I think we're still living in a time where setting a positive example, where being visible, where seeing other people like you out there doing something adventurous, being behind the wheel, doing something that inspires them to try it themselves is still really, really important. Mm-hmm. It should be so standard and pedestrian by now. It should be so straightforward. There should be no question. It should be 50% of your Land Rover club should be women who own Land Rovers and take them out and drive, but it's not.
Yeah.
And, you would think that we'd have gotten past that at this day and age, but we still haven't.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's true. No, and it is great. I mean, I think that, first of all, I think Her Majesty would absolutely appreciate that you were driving one of her cars. I think that, she was such an advocate for, to the point where she would sort of force the royal household to endure her driving those Land Rovers. She never went a day without the ability to drive right up, to very close to the end of her life, was photographed driving, her collection of Land Rovers, be it the 110 that I got an opportunity to ride in with Nick, or be it, the Land Rovers that you guys were driving, the early series cars. She was such an advocate for driving herself and not being chauffeured around. And although obviously for state purposes and things she had to be, but whenever she could, she would drive. And I think that's a sort of a testament to her. And I think it's so appropriate that, that in this big event with all these cars over here, that sort of tradition, continues. I think that's super cool. And like I said, I think she would absolutely be smiling down on that, because again, she was, she would boot around in those Land Rovers. Like I said, the 110 that Nick and I got to drive, she was heavily photographed in that truck spent most of its time up at Balmoral, and she was always photographed driving that sucker around. And in fact, it had like a seat cushion raise. The pedals were cranted up. Nick had quite a time driving it because he was sort of folded up behind it because she was so little. And even then, you sort of see pictures of her just sort of with her eyes just above the steering wheel, which is just fantastic. It's just such a great.
I think Jenna certainly did her proud. Jenna, those old museum cars are not necessarily easy to drive. Like it took a lot of finessing to keep it running smoothly, because that car, I mean, I think Jenna has now put 10% of the total mileage on that vehicle. Now that we've driven it as much as we have. But those vehicles don't move a lot. They don't get a lot of time on the road, and it was sort of a bit untested. And so, Jenna had to do a lot of finessing to keep it running smoothly and, keep everything going really, really nice, and a little fiddling with it to get it running well. I think Jenna would have absolutely made the Queen proud.
Thanks, Liza.
Yeah, she was trained, mechanic in the military?
Yeah.
She did military service, and I can't remember exactly what her training was in, but
she was the first female member of Britain's royal family to volunteer for military duty. And she participated in the auxiliary territorial service and drove and serviced military and rescue vehicles.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Just pretty
Somebody
badass.
on my Instagram Somebody on my Instagram said, well, she worked on Land Rovers during the war, didn't she? And I had to point out, well, actually, Land Rovers came out after the war ended, but she worked on probably very similar vehicles. Yeah. And a lot of people credit that service in the war, working with those cars, to her love of driving and her love of driving herself and her love of manual transmissions, even later in life. Like, isn't that Range Rover Vogue? Isn't it a manual transmission?
One of them was. I don't remember which one.
I believe it is.
Yeah,
I think one of those Range Rovers
there was a top secret story which we're not allowed to reveal, but I think it resulted in a sort of a manual shifter instead of like a rotary dial.
But even one of the earlier ones, though, I think instead of automatic, they did a special build that was a manual transmission.
Manual transmission.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one.
Yeah, she did. She loved actual driving, and it was it's pretty cool. And I mean, a lot of people say, well, yeah, she just would sort of drive around in her back garden, but you have to remember her back garden is the size of most people's towns, so it's a legitimate drive. It's a legitimate
massive tracts of land.
Yeah, exactly. Like her back garden is the size of of a Midwestern town. So, no worries. And there's no roads. So, she actually needed the Land Rovers because they would go out and, fox hunting or whatever, and they would take these vehicles and she would drive, which I think is just exceptional, like, God, man.
Yeah, I think some really great stories came to light, just getting the cars out and driving, not sitting in a museum. That was maybe the coolest part of seeing them all.
Agreed.
But certainly in that setting, on that beautiful section of coastal highway, and with all those important, fabulous cars that everybody brought from around the world, that was really cool to see.
It was very, very cool.
Very, very cool.
And neat that...
and, for a week or two, it became our entire personality, and now we're ready to get back to the real world again. But, yeah, super, super unique opportunity. We'll never see those cars. I can say pretty confidently, I don't think those cars will ever be seen necessarily all together in that place at that time.
Right.
Like it was a truly once in a lifetime opportunity, and a real privilege to get to be a part of it.
Yep. And to finish up, I mean, if you haven't seen any of the social media around this yet, basically look anywhere on the internet, because there is, the Pebble Beach official feed has some great stuff. Obviously, all of our social media is completely saturated with all things driving the Queen's Land Rovers. There's great news articles, and we are doing our very best to vacuum everything up all over the internet and distribute this out so everybody can get a look at it. And so certainly head on over to all of our social media feeds and check that out. But yeah, just amazing. I mean, you two have become absolute celebrities, more so than you already are. This has certainly elevated your celebrity to a new level, driving these cars, and some really, I mean, exceptional photos, of course, some classic Dimblebees that you got out of this.
I'm fitting our tiaras to our helmets.
That's exactly right. Yeah, good modifications for the Rebelle. I'm sure that's a good safety mod to put those on there. And yeah, absolutely, some incredible Dimbleby and some incredible photography from the Pebble folks as well. Some great shots from them as well.
And Damo, don't forget Damo.
And Damo, some great video from our good friend Damo, who works with Nick on the video side. And yeah, just really incredible. So definitely go check out any of that. Just go to the internet and you'll find it. It's just there. It's on the internet. So enjoy that. And speaking of the internet, if you haven't been to the old Underpowered Hour YouTube, man, we are dangerously close. So close. So close. Put it on for your dog or something when you're away, to getting the number of hours to get to our magic 1,000 subscribers and 3,000 viewing hours. There is the Vorshire trailer power upgrade, lithium battery, solar panel, power upgrade video is up there. You can see Liza and I nearly electrocuting ourselves a number of times in doing that install. Great stuff there. Forward to that. And then in the coming weeks, the field trials of that particular kit. So you can look and make bets on if my coffee maker will in fact work in the field or not. Well, if we're going to get espresso from the lithium battery pack or not. But anyways, with
and
that.
The panini press.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yes, of course. The field panini press and all that sort of all the comforts at home out there in the field. But with that, it's been fantastic to both your majesties. Congratulations on your Pebble Beach driving. I guess we should is there a proper title to address you by now, or is there some kind of salutation or something that you're required now, or should we? Am I not supposed to look you directly in the eyes anymore, or how does that work exactly?
I think you have to honor Her Majesty's memory by, not only maintaining your current fleet of Land Rovers, but also adding to it.
That's exactly right. I think that's what she would want. That's exactly right.
I'm sure that's
getting a few corgis, just throwing a few corgis in there. Why not? So, with that, it's been a slice.
I don't know if we should mention it, but I mean we mentioned JLR, but obviously this was actually a huge undertaking by Land Rover Classic, which is
right.
sort of a different category. And so Michael Bishop and all the crew over at Land Rover Classic deserve a huge shout out and kudos for so much time and energy and undertaking putting that event together.
Paul Barrett, Nick Wilson, Tony, Jocko, and Jono, and Michael Bishop. Thanks to everybody.
Man,
for making that
what a crew. Jeffrey Hooden, what a crew. They are really, it's amazing. It's amazing that JLR is supporting the classic heritage of the company. It's so important, I think, to, selling the beautiful new Range Rover, the beautiful new version of the Range Rover that was exclusive for this event, I think made all the better when you see the Suffix A Range Rover parked out front. That was the impetus for the whole brand lineage. I think that's really important, and I think people really understand and appreciate that. So yeah, of course, thank you again to Land Rover Classics and Michael and everybody for having us and allowing us to ride and drive in these incredible vehicles. And yeah, with that, it's been a slice, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you on the trail.
Thanks.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Beres, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Beres. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.